I'm Arnaud Le Hors from IBM. I'm part of the Open Technology Group, and I'm focusing on the Hyperledger project. I'm an elected member of the Technical Steering Committee of the Hyperledger.
How was your keynote? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's very nice. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about blockchain. I think blockchain technology is becoming more and more popular. Public interest is increasing for good reasons. I think the technology is maturing. It's still very young. And it doesn't compare to other fields where we have years and years of experience and best practices. Blockchain is still very young, but I think we already have applications in productions today. And so I think it's totally normal that people pay more attention to this and start looking how could they possibly leverage this technology for their own business.
You also mentioned that the Hyperledger project is a new type of platform for the next generation of the internet. Why the next generation and not this generation?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it were the existing tech, it doesn't have to be exclusive in that way. There's a progression, obviously, but it's clear that blockchain technology is a decentralized database system, if you will, and so it totally leverages the fact that the internet is there, that you can actually have this kind of decentralized system. And so, and it enables a new type of interactions between parties that don't necessarily trust each other completely, and in a way that wasn't possible before. So this is what the next generation comes into play. It's somewhat revolutionary in that respect. We expect people, will be able to digitalize some of their business doings or dealings in a way that wasn't possible before. What's interesting is that we're talking about business networks, so maybe it will be a little bit of a barrier to adoption in that people cannot just adopt blockchain on their own. That doesn't make sense. It's not a system you can install on your system for yourself. You might as well just use a centralized database. The interesting part is really when a business network that includes different participants really decides to adopt blockchain as a way to reduce friction in their business. And so essentially it allows them to maintain a universal source of truth that is basically maintained. Everybody has their own version of the ledger, but the system guarantees that everybody's version is kept in sync with everybody else's. So if you have complete trust in a single party maintaining the database, you might as well just use that. If on the other end, nobody trusts each other completely, or if you have this kind of system where everybody wants to keep their own version, it's better to use blockchain, because what happens typically is with traditional businesses, everybody has its own version of the truth by maintaining their own database. And then when problems arise, what happens is they have to compare notes, essentially, and try to get through a reconciliation process that can be time-consuming and very costly. The way I like to portray it is that, for me, blockchain basically forces reconciliation up front. So before you actually put any information in the database, you have the whole network agree on what information goes into the database so that there is no reconciliation needed later on. You can just look at what's in the database. You have the information there that has been agreed upon by all the parties in the network. Calling it a database is a bit abusive. It's a very specific type of database, because there's this notion of ledger with a set of transactions. That part is immutable. You cannot change transactions. You cannot delete transactions. You can add more transactions, so you can change the information, what we call the world state. But if you want to undo a transaction, you submit a new transaction that has the effect of undoing the effect of the previous one. And so there's the immutability in that sense. But of course, you can change information. But so it's a very, at the blockchain level, it's very data agnostic. You can use it for all sorts of database needs when it comes to what kind of assets you want to maintain, the type of transactions you want to support in your system. This can be completely defined at the application level. The system at the basic level really just guarantees the system of synchronization of all the different versions or copies of the ledger, rather, that all the participants have.
Do you think this is the reason why more companies and banks are adopting blockchain now, because it's agnostic, or just because everyone is, well, not everyone, but a lot of companies are doing it?
So I think, again, of course, there's always people who are really on the forefront. I think initially, blockchain came about because of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a bit of, anarchist side to it, and it scared a lot of people and the governments and financial institutions. If you talked about blockchain and kind of Bitcoin, a lot of businesses want nothing to do with this. Now, because we have been able to extract the underpinning of the Bitcoin, which is really the blockchain technology, which is applicable to a lot more applications, and in the case of the Hyperledger, the organization is really focusing on providing a technology that is suitable for the business, the enterprise, where you can define your own private networks, so it's not completely open to everybody. This has actually gained interest from a lot of businesses who now realize that there's something that can be of interest to them.
Speaking of the Hyperledger project, it's been 1 year since it was launched, and still it has managed to do quite a lot. So what is the next milestone?
So I think, indeed, we have seen a huge growth in membership alone. We have over 150 members, I think, now, and there is a growing number of projects. So people need to understand that Hyperledger is really an organization, it's a consortium type of thing, and so the organization hosts different projects. And so there are actually 3 different frameworks that allow you to install and set up your own blockchain network already existing, and more to come. And so there's Fabric, Sawtooth Lake, and Iroha as the existing frameworks. 2 more have been announced. There is Corda from R3 that has been announced that would eventually come as a contribution to the project. And there is a small company called Monax that has made an official proposal to bring their Ethereum implementation to the project. And so what is clear is now the project has become this umbrella organization that hosts several projects. And overall, it's kind of an interesting setup because there's a bit of competition between the different projects, and at the same time, there's a lot of collaboration. We have these ongoing meetings and calls where we all share notes and talk to each other, and we try to learn from each other. And so there's this cross-pollination happening between the projects, and we really try overall to advance the state-of-the-art of blockchain technology for the IT industry at large.
You mentioned Fabric. What is the purpose of it, and what problem does it want to solve?
So Fabric was designed with really the goal of providing blockchain technology for the enterprise in a way that would scale, that would be private, so you can actually identify the participants and control and provide the right amount of confidentiality and privacy that business needs. It is not practical to have public networks and then tell people, well, you can encrypt your data. In reality, we have actually found that not only people want to create private networks, but even within a network, they want to have subgroups. And so in the latest version of Fabric 1.0, which was just released in March, we have actually introduced the notion of multi-channels, which actually allows you to segment the network so that certain transactions can only be shared with a subgroup of the participants of the network. And so these are key characteristics of this framework that are not very commonly available in other frameworks.
And Fabric is written in Go, right?
Yes, Fabric is written in Go.
A lot of developers are happy to hear that because they love Go, but why this language and not Java, for example?
So I actually don't know the origin of using Go, but it's somewhat irrelevant unless you want to be part of the core development team, where obviously the core framework is written in Go. When it comes to application development, you actually have many options. At the chain code level, which is kind of like the store procedure equivalent for blockchain, you can write it in Go because that's a native language, but we also support Java. And so you can write your chain code in Java. On the client side, there are several SDKs available. There is one that's very popular. It's based on Node.js, so it's JavaScript. But we also have one in Python, one in Java, and there's a new one that just was contributed to the project in Go. So, and I expect this will continue as there is interest. These are the different points of entry into the system. There is no reason we couldn't expand further. Even on the chain code level, I mean, we already had planned, for instance, to have a JavaScript as well, and it's the same. The system is set up so there's a shim layer that allows to plug different languages. So that's another principle of the Fabric framework that drove its design. It's to make it very modular. So we really looked for a system where it could address many different use cases by allowing all sorts of different configurations. So it's very flexible, and based on each use cases, we're going to analyze what configuration is best suited to address this use case, and then you can use the same framework with the right configuration to address many different use cases. And in fact, 1.0 is a redesign of the previous framework we had, and it was entirely driven by this realization that even though we had this primary goal of being flexible, it wasn't quite flexible enough, and so we learned a lot of lessons and we addressed those in the new version.
Well, we talked about Fabric and we talked about programming languages, and let's talk about developers' interest in experimenting in playing with blockchain. Last year, from what I know, they weren't so interested in playing with blockchain, but now all of a sudden they are. So what changed?
Yes. So I mean, it's hard to pinpoint exactly the reason, but I think it's clear that there is a trend going on, and it's clearly gaining momentum. We see it again in the case of the Hyperledger at the association level. We see a lot of companies joining, and we see it also at the developer level. Indeed, people realize this is a new technology that is going to play an important role moving forward, and that people need to get their head around. So it's an open source organization. The community really, uses modern tools to communicate, and I'm regularly contacted by people who actually just want to understand what this blockchain is about, and they want to build up skills that they'll be able to use moving forward in projects that they expect will want to leverage blockchain, right? So I think we have indeed turned a corner there in terms of the adoption. I think it's also a combination related to the fact that the technology is more mature. We have already learned quite a bit, as I was saying. We just released 1.0, which is a lot more solid than what we had before. And so I think people get the word out. There's more and more conferences. I can tell you I'm being asked more and more to speak, which is great. I'm very happy to join this kind of event. And I think the more the word gets out, the more people look into it, want to understand it. So I think it's only going to go up from there.
Yeah, it is very important to understand it properly in order to go forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much, and have a nice conference.
Well, thank you very much.